In today's video, I'm going to be showing you everything you need to know to get started with neo soul and R&B soloing. Enjoy! How's it going? I'm Dave, and my channel is all about helping you create awesome neo soul and R&B sounds on your guitar. If you're new here and that sounds like your kind of thing, make sure you hit that subscribe button and you click the notification bell so that you're notified every single time I release a new video. Now, before we get started with today's lesson, I just want to let you know about my book, Chord Charisma. I'm offering the first 2 chapters of the book, Chord Charisma, for free. What those first 2 chapters are going to do is show you how to build a nice chord progression and build it up to something that sounds really jazzy and sophisticated with 9ths, 11ths, 13ths, all sorts of crazy chords. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, the link's down in the description. The first 2 chapters are free. In today's lesson, this is a beginner's guide to soloing in neo soul and R&B. So if you're completely new to soloing or you don't have a lot of experience soloing, then this is going to be absolutely perfect for you. Now, if you're a more advanced player and you want to see an intermediate or an advanced neo soul R&B soloing guide, let me know down in the comments. If there's enough demand for it, then I will definitely make those videos. So today I'll be showing you some tips and I'll be showing you some techniques that you can use to improve your soloing and get some really awesome sounds out of your guitar. First of all, we need to learn the scale that we're going to be using. We're going to be using the A minor pentatonic scale. So for those of you who haven't learned this scale before, A minor is the key that we're playing in. Pentatonic means the scale has 5 notes. So let's learn the scale. We're going to be playing 5/8 on the low E string. We're going to play the 5th fret with the index finger and 8th fret with our little finger. Okay, then we're moving down to the next string. We're going to play 5/7. That's on the A string. We're going to use our index finger for 5 and our ring finger for 7. Same thing on the D string, 5/7. Same thing on the G string, 5/7. Then for the top 2 strings, the B string and the E string, we're going to play 5 and 8, which are using our index finger and little finger. So altogether, the scale should sound a little bit like this. Now with the minor pentatonic scale, there are 5 shapes to learn all over the neck. That will really be beneficial for you to learn. We're not going to go over all 5 today, just to keep things nice and simple. I've got a few tips that you need to pay attention to when you're soloing, as these are really going to help. So the first tip is to know where your root notes are. So the root note is basically the first note in the scale. This 5th fret here, okay? Now, the scale repeats itself in this shape because obviously we're playing more than 5 notes. So there are other root notes. So we've got the 5th fret of the low E string, of course, that's our first one. We've got the 7th fret of the D string, that's another root note. And we've got the 5th fret of the top E string. That's our 3rd root note. So we've got these 3 root notes. Now, when you're soloing and creating melodies and improvising, you want to be really focused on ending your melodies on a root note. This is because it creates a resolved sort of sound. If you don't finish on the root note, it could sound very unresolved and unfinished. So let me just give you a quick example. I'm going to make a lick on the spot, but I'm not going to finish on the root note. And then I'm going to do the same lick again, but I am going to finish on the root note. And you'll hear how much of a massive difference it makes. Now that was finishing on a note that wasn't the root note. Now let me do the same lick but finish on the root note. So there you go, you can hear the difference. When I land on that root note, the lick sounds like it's finished and there's no tension. The tension's been resolved. Now, of course, there are other notes that you can use to finish your melodies, but for now, as a beginner, just to get used to creating nice, solid melodies, finish on the root note and you can't go wrong. Now, the second tip I've got for you is to tell a story with your solos. Oftentimes when I'm teaching and I'm jamming with students, my students will just play notes. They'll just... It doesn't really sound very melodic, it just sounds like notes. So you want to be telling a story. And when I say tell a story, I mean, think about basically where you want the solo to go. Do you want it to get quieter? Do you want to slow things down? Do you want to speed things up? Do you want to bring the volume up? Do you want to be more aggressive, more gentle, more calm? And just go with what your emotions are telling you to do. So for example, I'm going to tell a story of a nice build up. So it's going to start off calm and we're going to gradually get just a little bit louder and more aggressive. Let's have a listen. Okay, so here, how my intention there was to start off a bit calm and just get a little bit louder. It wasn't the best solo in the world, but I had an idea of where I was going, so it sort of made sense. Definitely tell a story when you're playing your solos. Now, my third tip kind of ties into that, and it's to slow down and utilize pauses. So a lot of times, my students, when we're jamming, they just won't stop playing. They just completely just notes without a break. And it doesn't give the listener any sort of time to register what's been played. I like to say when you hit a root note, just stay on the root note for a while. Just hang around for a bar or two. See how I'm just hanging around? There's no need to rush. There's no need to just keep playing notes non-stop. Sometimes pauses can be more effective than playing lots of millions of notes, okay? So playing nothing can be the better thing to do. So always have that in mind as well. So let's get into the more technical stuff. I've got a few techniques for you to start using in your soloing that are really going to improve the sound of your solos. So the first technique is grace notes. Grace notes are really, really awesome. They're one of the biggest things that change things for me and my soloing, and they're very simple to do. So all we're going to do is, for example, if we're playing the root note at the 7th fret of the D string, we could just play the note and pick the note like that. But what adds a little bit more expression is if we could maybe hammer on from the 5th fret to the 7th fret really, really quickly. So this 5th fret here is just going to be a passing note. We're going to get off it as quickly as we get onto it. So there we go. Okay, so we're really intending to get to that 7th fret, but we're playing that 5th fret just really, 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 really quickly, just to add a little bit more flavor to the solo. So we can hammer it on. We could also slide into it. Okay, and you can do this with pretty much any note in the pentatonic scale. Yeah, you can go backwards as well as forwards. So there's lots of different ways of doing it. As I said, this is going to make a big difference in your playing. You don't want to overdo it. You don't want to do it for every note. You just want to do it for notes that you're wanting to kind of emphasize and add a little bit more emotion and flavor to. So I've created a lick where I use quite a few grace notes. So you can take a listen to how it would sound in context. Now, I have maybe overdone it a little bit, like I have with all of the techniques in this video, but it's just so you can see the effect that they have. So let's take a listen. The second technique that I've got for you is palm muting. Now, palm muting can really affect the dynamics of your solos. It can really bring the volume down, and it can also make things sound really aggressive. It's quite a versatile technique. So all we're going to do is we're going to take the palm of our hand, put it next to the bridge, just so it's touching the strings and it deadens the note of the strings a little bit. So I'm deadening the note with my palm here. If I take my palm off, I've got a normal open string sound there, okay? So that's what a palm mute sounds like. If we apply that to a lick, so let me take this lick here. Okay, very, very simple. But now I'll just apply some palm mutes in certain places and we'll see how it can affect the sound of the lick. Okay, just adds a little bit more flavor there, a little bit of a touch of emotion and feeling into the solo. Now, it will take a little bit of experimentation to get the right amount of muting there. What you want to do, I'd say, this is how I show people, is I tell my students to put their palm behind the bridge so it's not affecting the sound of the strings, and literally just very slowly, as you're picking a note, bring it further and further along until you hear that palm muted sound that we want. Okay, and if you bring it even further, we get a bit more of a chunky sort of sound. So there's lots of different variation you can use with palm muting. You can have a very light palm mute, or a very chunky, solid palm mute. Like that. So take a listen to a little lick that I wrote using palm muting. The third technique is double stops. Now, double stops are a really, really essential soloing technique in neo-soul and R&B. You hear them used all the time. Now, double stops are just where we play two notes at the same time. So it could be any two notes in the pentatonic scale at the same time. Okay, but I'm just going to show you the best ones to get started with, and then you can experiment further with them. We've got 5 and 5 on the bottom two strings, so we're basically playing two adjacent strings and the notes that are either on the left or the right side of the pentatonic scale. So I'll show you the exact ones that we're using. So we're playing 5 and 5 on the E and A strings. We're playing 8 and 7 on the E and A strings. We're playing 5 and 5 on the A and D strings. We're playing 7 and 7 on the A and D strings. Then on the next two strings, the D and G strings, we're playing 5 and 5, and then 7 and 7. Then we're playing 5 and 5 on the G and B strings. Then we're playing 7 and 8 on the G and B strings. And then on the top two strings, the E and B strings, we're playing 5 and 5 and 8 and 8. Okay, so we've got... And you can create really cool sounds using these. Again, you don't want to overdo it. You just want to kind of throw them in there, just a little sprinkle here and there. Okay, so take a listen to a lick that I used some double stops in. So technique number 4 is vibrato. Now, vibrato is a very subtle technique, but it does make a really big difference. What we're doing is we're very slightly bending the pitch of the note that we're playing up and down, okay? As you can hear, it's very subtle. Now, the key with vibrato is that less is more. So you want to only bend the string very, very slightly. So we're going down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Yeah, we don't want to be bending the string to a new note. I hear a lot of my students do that and it just doesn't sound very pleasant, okay? So we're just bending very, very, very gently. Okay, now this does take a little bit of practice to get better at, but once you do get better at it, then it can really, really improve the sounds of your solos. Again, this is one of those ones where you just want to use on the notes that you want to emphasize and the ones that you really want to make sing. So be careful, don't use it on every single note. I've written a lick where I place vibrato on the last 3 notes. It's going to be very obvious vibrato, maybe a little bit too much, but you can hear the difference it makes, and that's the point. So take a listen. The final technique is probably the hardest technique, and that is bending. So bending is pretty self-explanatory. We're bending the string into a new pitch. So, for example, let's take the 8th fret of the B string, and we want to bend that up to this pitch, to our root note pitch. So we're going to take 3 fingers, we're going to place it on the string. Our ring finger is going to be on the 8th fret, our middle finger and index finger go just behind our ring finger, and we're going to use our fingers, stretch them out a little bit to bend the string. Okay, and get a nice little sound like that. It does take a lot of practice, again, just like all these other techniques, just like everything in guitar in general, but they can be a very, very nice addition to your soloing. Now, there are a couple of things you need to pay attention to with bending, and that is, first of all, you want to do your bend really quickly. There's nothing that sounds worse than a really slow bend. Yeah, okay, it can work. It definitely can work, but you have to be very, very intentional about it. And most of the time, when beginners are soloing and bending slowly, it doesn't sound good. So try and bend up to the note that you're bending to very quickly. The second tip is not to bend the root note. Do not bend the root note. If you bend the root note, it sounds disgusting. So just don't do it, okay? Let me show you. Okay, just not recommended. You can make it work if you know what you're doing as well, so I'm not saying don't ever do it, but generally, for now, you want to avoid it. So take a listen to where I've used some bending in a lick. Now, technique number 6 isn't really a new technique. It is to combine techniques together. You can mix and match these techniques into a new technique. So for example, I could use double stops and grace notes at the same time. So I could do that. Can you hear how I play the grace note on the lower note? And I just played that top note at the same time. Something else we could do is maybe mix double stops with palm muting. Okay, so that's something we could do. And something we could also do is use bending with vibrato, for example. So we could go... It's a little bit difficult to do, but again, all you got to do is practice and you'll get better at it. So that was the video, a beginner's guide to soloing in the neo soul and R&B genre. And actually, to be honest, this video is going to help for any other genre you're playing in. It's very, very useful. The fundamentals are usually the same in all genres. So if you enjoyed the video, please click the like button. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Again, if you want to see an intermediate or an advanced lesson on the same topic of soloing, then let me know down in the comments. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel because there's plenty more where this came from. And also, if you want to get my book, Chord Charisma, the first 2 chapters are free. So I definitely recommend checking those first 2 chapters out. You've got nothing to lose and you're going to learn a lot from it as well. Once you've done all those things, check out this video too. You're going to learn a lot from that as well. And I'll see you there. Have a good one.